Standard of living. A decent standard of living is based on the income, and on the international scale, it is a gross domestic product, or the GDP. The GDP measures the values of the goods and services that are produced within a country in a year. Gross national product, or GNP, is the value of the goods and services that a country produces in a year and includes markets within and outside of the country. GNP shows how much a particular country's companies are making both in the country and on foreign soil. In a developed country, the GDP, per capita GDP, and the GNP is high due to the demand for products and the ability to pay for them. In a developing country, the GDP, per capita GDP, and the GNP are significantly lower due to the low amounts of people working with low wages. Access to education. There are two factors in determining the access to education. First is the average number of years of schooling for the adult population, and the second one is the number of years that the youth population is expected to spend in school. Factor 1. In most developed countries, citizens over the age of 25 have spent 11 or more years in school. In developing countries, most citizens over age 25 only receive about 5 years of education. This shows that overall, people in developed countries receive a higher amount of schooling than people in developing countries. Factor 2. The student to teacher ratio is the number of students divided by the number of teachers. A student gets more attention and assistance with a smaller ratio. The final division is the literacy rate, which is the percentage of people within a country that can read and write. In most developed countries, like the US, the literacy rate is very close to 100%, meaning that most, if not all, people can read and write. However, in developing countries like South Sudan or Yemen, it is much lower, only around 20 to 30%. A long and healthy life. Healthcare is a huge contributor to the standard of living in a country. Life expectancy is the average number of years that a person is expected to live. It is much higher in developed countries because social, economic, and medical conditions are very high. The infant mortality rate is the number of babies that die per 1,000 births. In developing countries, babies often die because they did not get enough food, lack access to adequate medical attention, or do not get the medication and vaccines that they need to live. Before moving on to specific examples, let's revisit the subdivisions within the developed and developing countries. UDC, which stands for Underdeveloped Country, in which most people still forage for food. LDC, which stands for Less Developed Country. The country is slightly developed but is still in the primary sector. Most people produce food for themselves. Next one is a DC, which stands for a developed country. It is a moderately developed country, mostly in the secondary sector. It has less distribution of wealth. Next one is a MDC, which stands for more developed country. It has a strong secondary and tertiary sector, along with wealth and education being widespread. The last one up is a VDC, which stands for a very developed country. It has a very productive tertiary, quaternary, and quinary sectors, and most of the population has wealth and a very high degree of education. Now that we have refreshed our memory, let's head into some specific countries. Number 1 is India. We know that India is a DC, and that is because of its uneven spread of wealth and education in the financial capital itself of Mumbai. The two distinctions can be seen in rich neighborhoods like Malabar Hill and in slums like Dharavi. Another reason why India is a DC is because of its primary and secondary sectors in villages like Belhay. Time to go over the stats of India. India's HDI is 0.647. Its GDP is $2.71 trillion, and its per capita GDP is around $7,000. The second one on our list is Japan. Japan is considered a VDC due to the high levels of education and the wealth being spread out equally throughout the country. Even when you compare two cities like Tokyo and Shimoda, the difference is not much. Reviewing the stats of Japan, its HDI is 0.915, its GDP is $4.917 trillion, and its per capita GDP is $43,300.